Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Silent Films, back when they took no talking in the movie theater very seriously. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Robco. Robco, get the robot without a glitch, fix your problem without a hitch. Robco. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We make stuff behind and in front of the camera. A lot of voice acting lately, but we're also regular, normal people actors. we use our faces as well when asked to. I was in Wyoming last week. I did a shoot. It was pretty cool. Went to Wyoming to shoot a project at an old abandoned mine. And I'll flesh this out a little bit because the whole backstory, I think, gets into some really cool stuff. But back in the 1880s or so, there was a gold rush into that area of Wyoming that brought a bunch of speculators or whatever they call them, and they didn't find any gold. But what they did find was copper in this little area called Hartville, and they started mining for the copper. And after like 6 years, they were like, there ain't so much copper here. And so that's how they talked back then, by the way. And they decided, oh, you know what is here, though? They got to the iron. I don't know why.
Oh, please stop it.
And so they started mining for the iron there. And that led to a really huge industry that went for over 80 years. And in fact, at one point, I think it was owned by John Rockefeller. And he built some stuff out there, and they built what's called a company town, where the company owned everything. They built houses, they built gyms, and they had movie nights. They built all kind of stuff out there, barbershops, just so that everyone could live out there. Because again, this is the backwoods Wyoming, which isn't already, just a center of, cultural activity in the States. And so after 80 years of mining this thing, they started with like strip mining, and that's where you have to put dynamite basically on the surface and just blow a bunch of stuff up. And then they go and collect it. They throw it in a mine cart, fill the cart, send it off to, via rail to some big processing plant down in Colorado. And then after a while, they kept blowing stuff up on the surface, and it just kept creating a bigger and bigger hole, a big pit, that got harder and harder to get those mine carts out of the top of it. And so they started next what they called the glory hole method. And then they just said, okay, instead of pulling the mine carts out over the top, yes, you are correct in that phase. We did nothing but act like 12-year-olds the entire time. And trust me, saying that over and over in front of an archaeologist without smirking, best acting of my life.
I was gonna say. Awesome.
And so that method is where they just keep blowing stuff up on the surface, but then let it fall down into the pit. And in the pit, they load it up onto those carts, send it down a mine shaft, and then lift it via hoist out of the mine. And that way they could now continue to keep creating a bigger hole and getting stuff out. Eventually, even that got to be too much, and they started a whole new method called block caving. Anyway, that goes for 80 years. Sometime in the late 30s, there was a teacher out there. Again, this was a whole town. They built a school, and they had a teacher out there who on his downtime would kind of walk around. He found this little spot in the middle of town, basically, and he would find these little artifacts, these little, like, what we normally would call arrowheads, but what archaeologists call projectile points. And so he would keep finding these little projectile points on the ground, and he just saved them. And he had built a big collection. So the mine is closed in 1980, and we get now into something like 1981 to 85, somewhere in this area. And they're having a reunion. This guy, this teacher, goes back, and he's excited to go see everyone, and he sees that they've started what they call reclamation, reclaiming some of the land, and which means effectively blowing it up and filling in places to kind of smooth it all out and make it more accessible to people. I think that's what they mean when they say reclamation. That's what it sounded like. I never got an exact definition, so I'll look it up and put it in the show notes so that we can be more precise. So he sees that part of this reclamation process is the very next day that he gets there going to blow up this place that he had kept finding all these little ancient artifacts. And so he's like, whoa, 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 y'all are about to blow up this interesting little spot. And so he finds a local archaeologist that then goes and stops the day before they're about to blow this thing up. And they start then, and he pulls out like this sack, this whole collection of these old artifacts. And that, you and I see it, we're thinking this is probably from Native Americans, a few hundred years ago. What they end up finding out is this thing is actually an even older mine from thousands of years ago, and would come to find out that maybe the oldest mine, certainly of this type, in the Americas, period, dating back over 14,000 years. And so this guy ended up discovering this huge understanding of our past here in America. And they've started excavating. Now they have whole teams of archaeologists that are going out there and they're digging, looking for stuff. And so I got to go out there and tell all these stories. One, how they were doing the mining back in, the 1900s through the 80s. And then what the archaeologists were finding, as well as the town itself, what came about of the town, why did it get there, all that stuff. And I'm doing this all in like VR. And the one thing that I thought was really funny is I kept throwing out like my favorite movie lines, stuff like, this belongs in a museum. And apparently they're not big on Indiana Jones out there. They were too busy like learning about archaeology to actually watch that, or Jurassic Park, or any of that stuff. So
Amazing. Oh my God. You didn't stop to think that you should.
They didn't catch any of my jokes.
Oh my gosh.
Which made it double funny for me, but zero for them. So it was amazing though. And even doing something like that, the whole process really started with the script and understanding what story are we trying to tell. And once we understand that, now we can figure out and back our way into what visuals do we need to capture to help tell that story. And that became a whole interesting creative process in itself, because most of the stuff out there is torn down. How do you tell a story without any of the landmarks that help you tell that story, or without most of them? And so that became a really interesting creative journey that I worked through with my producer and the archaeologist and everyone there. Like, it was really fun, and we're in post now, so we'll see how that all goes. But it's all part of the creative process, that I think part of that helps me is what we do here on our show, man. Just learning and getting interesting thoughts about what went into making something can then be backed into what you're making and creating now, I think.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Golly. Yeah, how do you tell that story? That's got to be really like an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, what can you give any tips? Like, how did you look at that? Because this is a visual medium. So
a lot of it, we're going to be exploring things that I haven't done before, but I'm all about experimenting and trying things. And so one thing that we do have is a fair amount of like old photographs. And so I was like, okay, what if we take some of these old photos and now we go film in VR, 360 video, these same spaces, and then find a way to overlay the photographs so that you can see where the building used to be and still have that sense of immersion. That'll be one thing. They also have these stone circles that they used to use to hold down teepees a few hundred years ago. And they still have these old stone circles, and it's literally like, I don't know, these 10 to 12 inch in diameter rocks. And the way they stacked, you could see that it turned into a circle, and that was just how they pinned down the edges of the teepee. And so with that, because obviously there's no more teepees, let alone the hides probably don't exist anymore that they were made of. So I'm like, okay, I can animate that stuff on, or I can animate on a picture of this. At the time, it was the largest garage in the world. It had the Guinness Book of World Records, and it held over like 100 cars. And so I'm like, oh, I could draw on that, what all the framing used to look like for, this garage. stuff like that. And so we'll see. Like, it's experimental. Who knows if it'll work? It kind of has to. Stuff like that, man. Just crossing your fingers, doing your best, and see what happens.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to see it, man. God,
Same, man. Yeah, it was a pretty magical glory hole. So we'll.
Okay, that's enough. Oh God.
What are we
Speaking
covering?
of glory holes.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
Covering?
That's just the normal segue that we have. Speaking of whatever.
Speaking of
Today,
blowing stuff up on the ground, I think.
Sure. All right. So today we're covering A Quiet Place Day 1. As of this recording, it's just been released. Hopefully you can get to see this in theaters. But please watch the film before you listen to this episode. If you haven't, please pause and go do that, because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
Absolutely. We'll talk about a handful of things, mostly looking at the writing and the story, suspending disbelief, theme and plot, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. A woman named Sam finds herself trapped in New York City during the early stages of an invasion by alien creatures with ultra-sensitive hearing. Directed by Michael Sarnoski. Screenplay by Michael Sarnoski. Cinematography by Pat Scola. Featuring Lupita Nyong'o as Samira, Alex Wolff as Reuben, Joseph Quinn as Eric, and Djimon Hounsou as Henri.
And here's our clip. And that was it. So,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm pulling it.
I thought you were going to wait longer. You're good. You're on it. I like it.
Dude, so this is the third in the series, and they've done a really interesting pivot. So I'm curious, are you excited for the direction, and how did Day 1 strike you in comparison to the last two films?
Yeah. It's amazing. It's probably my favorite of the three, to be honest. I need to go back and rewatch it again, and it's funny walking out of it. So my son and I went to see it yesterday, and we don't really watch scary movies a lot. Like, he's only 11 and he's got the rest of his life to watch scary movies. I don't need to deal with nightmares. He doesn't need to know the world as it is quite yet, So, but the first one is just stressful. It's not really like gory or anything. So I was like, okay, let's try this a little bit, and he loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so we watched the second one, loved it again. So he was very excited about this one. And we went into it, and I was, kind of like standoffish a little bit. I was like, okay, well, let's just see. And I adored every moment of it. I absolutely did. And it had something to do with the fact that he was sitting next to me, but you know what? That's part of the movies. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's who you go see it with. I mean, I sometimes go to movies with other friends, and it's a different experience than going to a movie with like you, or a movie that I want to see with my son, which I've never done that before. I mean, we've gone and seen movies a lot, but usually it's like a kid's movie or something, and this time this is a movie where like I'm about to do a podcast on it. I'm watching it for details, and I'm excited to see it. And it was fantastic. So the experience was great, but also I really love the chances they took. I felt like they took some serious chances here. Like, we know the world. They've already built us this world. This world is rural. This world is people that know the situation, are struggling to survive in a situation that they understand. Well, to a point. They understand, Don't make noise. And then we understand the characters. In the first two, a lot of the same characters are there. We have, so, and in this case, all new characters, brand new setting, completely opposite from the other setting. We're in urban, in the city, and they took such a simple thing. Like, basically, the way that I felt watching this movie was it is not a story about monsters. It is a story about survival in the face of certain death, and survival for the smallest reason you can imagine. I'm just gonna go get some pizza. And it's obviously a bigger reason than that. It's, and we find out throughout the movie, her father used to play piano at this place, and they would always get pizza, and all she wants before she dies is a piece of pizza. And I it's just a great, amazing position we've put ourselves in. We are with someone who is terminal. She is definitely dying. We know that for a fact. And yet she's struggling to survive. And the reason is for the pizza. It's not really the pizza, but and I think it's beautiful. And then not only does she survive, to get the pizza, but she brings somebody, a perfect stranger, along with her. And at first I was sitting there wondering, okay, why is this guy latching on to her? And then I realized throughout his character development, which, by the way, Joseph Quinn, incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's done. I mean, I meant to go look, at his IMDb and see what he's done. He has to have done other stuff. But oh my God, I absolutely loved him and bought him as Eric, and as this guy he obviously has anxiety, severe anxiety, about not just about death, but about how he dies. He's afraid of water. He's terrified of water. And he never says that, but we know it. First time we meet him, he's coming up for air out of the subway. And we don't know why. We don't know what happened. We know the subway goes under the ocean. And so maybe the subway collapsed and he had to swim his way out. I don't know. But the cat calms him down. So he loves this cat instantly. He loves this cat. I also love the runtime. I love the liberties they took cutting things out. When he meets the cat, this is a good example. He meets the cat when we first see him. He's stressed out. He has this severe anxiety. He sees the cat and he immediately calms down. And then the cat runs away. We don't follow the cat to Samira. We don't follow him following the cat to Samira. It's just we cut to Samira and then the cat is there. That's great. I don't need this. I don't need to watch the cat run to her. They do that all over the movie where they cut out these things and your brain just pieces it together, and I don't know if it's for runtime or what, or if it was just like, we don't need that. Let's just tell the story. And so as it goes on, I find, I start realizing, he's following her because one, the cat is a connecting tissue there that calms him down, but also it gives him more of a purpose. He says to her in her apartment, which I think is a beautiful scene during the rain, so beautiful, says to her that he came to New York for law school. It was the only thing. It was the only thing he was supposed to do, or something like that. So I have this instant feeling of he doesn't really have a purpose. He feels like he doesn't have a purpose. And this was supposed to be his purpose, and now that's gone. And so he has no purpose. So why not go get pizza instead? Why not? And then, my God, at the end, when she gives him her sweater, and you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, he gave you his jacket. Why are you giving him your sweater? And we find out it's her father's. We find out it was her father's sweater. And I almost started crying in the theater. I was like, this is so beautiful. It has nothing to do with monsters. The monsters are fantastic. I think we see just enough of them in unique new ways, right? Like in their nest area, whatever that is. That was creepy as heck. But they use these moments to tell a little bit more of the story. So they're in the nest of the monsters, and in the spite of all that, this terrified guy climbs a beam to go get the cat, to save the cat, because he is nothing without that cat. That cat calms him down. He is surviving for that cat and pizza, but he wants to save the cat for her too. And another moment, like when she's laying there after he's gotten her meds and she's ready to die, and he said, "Not until you get pizza." They basically cut from that to the next day. She's up and he's helping her down the stairs. No fluff. Well, we have a wide shot of now it's day, and then he's helping her down the stairs.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because I know I want to talk to you about it, and I want to hear what you think. But I need to go see it again, but it might be my favorite of the three.
Wow. Like, I'm really glad. I was happy to sit and listen to you for another 20 minutes. Yeah, for me, one is still supreme. For me, it's not even close. Like the emotional journey that we go on in the first film, which I'll come back to later. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the first two as well, we'll probably ruin those two, but I'm assuming if you're here. So for me, I did like this way more than the second one. And I love what you're saying. Like, they took some risks, and this is the way you do it. This is the way you keep fleshing out a universe to create new opportunities. And I completely agree about Joseph Quinn. Here's the thing. We know we're going to get greatness out of Lupita Nyong'o. Like, of course, like, she's absolutely incredible in this. And every emotional beat is singing straight through. Alex Wolff, we know, is going to be great. Djimon Hounsou, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure he's played a bad guy here or there, but he has just got the sweetest presence, and all you want to do is like be protected by him. Like, and every time he's on any screen, I just freaking love him, and he kills it. And he's still able to play like really unique, characters. And so we expect all those things from those three actors. But Joseph Quinn to step in like that. And I agree. I know I've seen him in some other stuff. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I'm pretty sure he's been in something that I really, really loved. But he stepped in and really bridged a lot of gaps because, and this is funny, this is the second Wolff we've covered in the last, or I don't know if it was Alex Wolff. I think it was Nat Wolff that was in Jumanji, right? It's his brother, but for years I thought they were the same person because they look almost identical.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What? This is the kid from Jumanji, right?
Is it him? So there's an Alex
I
Wolff.
see his mole on his mouth.
But his brother has the exact same mole, exact same space. Like, look up Nat Wolff and Alex Wolff, and you would think same exact person.
Oh my gosh.
I did. And I was confused on how he kept playing high school teenagers for like a decade. But it turns out there's two of them.
Oh my God.
They might be multiplying. But I expect him to be great no matter what. And yeah, so this film, I really enjoyed it for all the reasons you're talking about. And I did feel a little unfulfilled by the end and distracted a few points, but still really happy that they made it. And it went into an interesting place. I thought naming the cat Frodo was kind of interesting because in this case, she's the ring kind of being, taken into the heart of Mordor to be dropped off or whatever. And Frodo is escorting her in a certain way. And maybe that also kind of explains, along with him being a service cat, which might actually be, it comes off as a joke at first. And the more you see the way the cat behaves, you're like, okay, that might actually be a service cat. And that's kind of the excuse, I think, for letting it be as incredibly aware of everything as it is. But yeah, there was just a few things that I was like, this is missing a few key components that I think would take it from a really good movie to as good or better than the original, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I'm in favor of this. If they did day 2 with a whole new cast of characters, I'm there, as well as letting someone else come in and tell a story. Like the fact that Sarnoski, wrote this is really cool. And I'm sure he was a part of the team, right? This is a Platinum Dunes thing. So he's talking to Krasinski, as well as Andrew Form, Brad Fuller, and whoever. I actually worked with those guys on Friday the 13th because that was their production. And they seem like really cool guys on the ball. And so I can imagine he's not just doing it in a silo, but also he clearly got a lot of free reign to just tell the story that he wanted to tell. And so that's such a cool way. And I also expect, I don't know what you think about this, I expect that in the background, they're building out a trilogy of Quiet Place films that's going to go into where these things came from and what comes next, like what's coming after them. Because as the first film, it could survive on its own and no other film needs to be made. But if you want to keep exploring this universe, you have to start digging a little bit more into the terra firma, because, okay, what now? What else? And so I love the little nest thing that you're talking about. We kind of get the mother alien vibe from that. Who knows where that's going? Like, okay, do they wait until all life has been wiped out and then they come and that's their version of, what do you call it? Terraformation. And so that's their method. They're terraforming Earth for the real inhabitants. So what do their owners look like? If these are the dogs, what do the people look like of this species? But so I'm excited for them to keep telling stories. If they hadn't done this version, if they'd just done another part 2 iteration, I'd kind of be done with this series. But because they said, no, let's pivot and think about this in a fresh way, that makes me really excited for the possibilities, because not enough franchises really do that. They just kind of keep doing the same thing, same characters. Star Wars is suffering from that. They keep, you know what we really need is more Han Solo and the original. Like, we don't go to a whole other era. Like, in this universe, so much more space to explore in a lot of ways, again, that I'll come to. That's my general thoughts. So I would be curious to see your second viewing if this still has the resonance for you, because, man, I loved all these characters so much. I loved Samira and Reuben's relationship. I loved that they then immediately kill off Reuben. That's going to make you lean forward and be like, well, what's next? Now what? Then we meet these kids and it's like, well, okay, what's happening with these kids? And then she gets rid of them, so to speak, so that she can be free to do her own thing. And that's when she picks up a bogey, Eric. And so it just keeps you on your toes of, oh, is that what this is now? Oh, no, it's not. Is that what this is now? And so I love that aspect of it. That just keeps, oh, there's Henri. Are we going to now become part of Henri's group? No? Oh, okay. And so they keep you guessing. And I love that aspect of the film.
Yeah, okay, I think you just put it into perspective for me. So I do need to see this again before I say that it is my favorite of the 3, like I said. But I think one of the things that I'm latching onto about how much I love this is because so many either sequels or the third of a film, they, like you said, they just kind of take the same formula, even if it's not the same formula as the first one, the same formula of a third movie, whatever that might be, and they follow that. And this did not do that. This took everything that was in the first 2 and did something like opposite from it in a way. Not opposite fully, but like different in almost every way. It was just different. And I think that was it felt like in the DNA of the script was, what was it like? Do something else. That's what I felt watching it. I was like, everything is new. The only thing that's not new is the monsters and how they hunt. That's it. That's like, it's kind of like the Elon Musk way of thinking, where you say, what is the one connecting factor, like the one minimal thing. I don't know how to say it. Like him.
Overlapping.
Take that. Yeah. Take that. Hold on to that. Everything else around it, make it different. And I felt like that, man, that is exactly what I want out of a movie. Just that. So whether or not it is my favorite almost doesn't even matter to me. I'm just so thankful that they made this, because it's a freaking blueprint for how to do something new out of something that's been done. You know, tell a new story with an old concept, and not an old, but you know what I'm saying, with a done concept. And just I had kudos to Krasinski for not holding on to it and saying, no, I'm going to write this and direct it too, like I did the first one. I think he did the second one too.
Yep.
I'm going to let somebody else take the reins and tell this story, because I've already told my version of this story. Somebody else has their other version. My version that I wanted to tell was about a father and about his love for his kids and his family. And I told that, and I'm good. Now I'm going to hand it off to somebody. Like, that is amazing. And it's not just that he was like gracious. It was kind of like everything goes back to Hamilton for me. But George Washington could have run for another term, but he didn't. He chose to step away to allow the country to learn how to change, and evolve, and to whatever. That's how this feels a little bit, on a lesser degree, obviously. Right, where he's like, I just told my story. I'm going to give it to somebody else to do, somebody that I trust. And the guy just destroyed it. So
cool. I'll run through a few notes, and you can jump in to disagree or or add notes.
Great.
So suspending disbelief is critical for any film. The ability to stop thinking I'm in a movie theater watching a movie that's been made up with cameras and lights and microphones and actors with lines that they're memorizing and rehearsing. And you have to suddenly forget all of that and just be completely embedded and engrossed in the story that's being told. And that requires a lot from everyone, certainly the viewer, but the filmmaker has to give you reasons to keep suspending that disbelief. Don't give the audience a reason to stop pretending with you. And I think for me, part of the problem was there was a litany of things that made me pause and eject from the story I was watching. One of them, and this is tricky, not everyone's going to agree with me on this, and that's obviously totally okay. But for me, watching this set in New York and watching these monsters come crashing down, it felt a little evocative of some of the 9/11 imagery that we're so familiar with. Now, it's not that I think we're well past the point of you can, use that stuff to effect without feeling gross. There was a good decade plus where I was like, stop telling. It just felt very cheap and sleazy to me that some of these stories were being told about something so horrific so soon. Like exploitative, of let's use this event for money gain. And there was so many things that came out of that I was just like not personally okay with. I didn't judge anyone for going and watching those. We all deal with stuff differently. And so for me though, watching this set in New York, it felt like there was some of that, whenever you see the dust cloud hit, stuff like that. Personally, and this is again, just me, I'm probably staying 100 feet away from any of that unless I want to use that as a metaphor to then explore this world and maybe tell a more layered approach that is giving a little bit more emotional weight to all of those experiences. And here it just felt like, oh, this is what we learned through some of these experiences. Let's just use that imagery. And to me, it's like I'm either going all in or I'm staying all out. I don't really want to dance around it. And because of some of that imagery, it just made me kind of pull back and like, wait, are we going there? Is this about the way in that moment, you saw people helping other people in this time of crisis? And that's what it felt like they were playing with without fully investing in. But maybe not. Maybe that was all just incidental. But again, that's why I either stay away from New York in this story or figure out another method visually. The other thing that kind of pulled me out, and that was brief. It's not like that kept me out the entire movie, but I was looking for several minutes after that. So there was this really nice, beautiful moment, right? She looks after those kids in the fountain, right? And she gets them to the exit parade of people. And so one thing that I thought about, like, as that sequence played out, was like, did those kids just die? I don't remember seeing them on the boat. I don't know, maybe they were and I just missed it. But it made me think she kind of led those kids to their death because that whole parade gets slaughtered, which was a genius idea of the way you can fail with good intentions. Like the choppers going out and saying, hey, quietly, there's no way to move 10,000 people quietly. It just doesn't exist. And I love that as a really good natured failure on the part of everyone. And I thought that was really cool. But what really screwed me up in that sequence was as it got louder and it drew all the creatures back, people started acting weirdly dumb. Like the guy under the car started screaming, help me, which felt really stupid and unmotivated because he clearly wasn't being attacked yet. And it was just like, you survived this long by clearly knowing the rules, and suddenly you're acting like a complete moron. I didn't believe that. It doesn't matter if people in reality would actually do that. What matters is in your story, having people act out of character like that makes me stop suspending disbelief. It makes me stop thinking that you as a storyteller screwed up and I'm calling you dumb by watching these characters act dumb because you wrote them to be that way. And in the same way, like moments later, she's walking around and there's this woman calling for Jonathan. And then she immediately gets killed. It's like, you didn't live this long by acting this way. It just, again, one of those little ejection moments for me. And then there's some other little minor ones. Some of these aren't as bad. Like the magic trick I thought was a really sweet, tender moment. But it also didn't make sense. I didn't really understand what purpose it was serving on any of the levels of the journey. It just felt like a random nice thing for him to do to her without serving any greater purpose. In that same way, I love the note, but I also saw him pull this note out of his pocket after being dunked in the ocean. And I was like, there's no way that thing is surviving. It's ink. You can't even open it, first of all, let alone the ink is all bled dry. And here's the thing. These aren't normally things I think about while watching a movie. And so I feel like if I'm over here getting really distracted by some of these story decisions, I can't be the only one. Maybe I am, but I don't know. That one threw me out. And then the last one was the trickiest, was the cat itself. When I see the cat survive, I thought that's really sweet. But then when I see her start risking her and everyone's life for the cat, that was tough. I think the cat is probably a metaphor for her holding on to life. And ultimately she hands the cat over in a symbolic way that says, I'm done now. It's okay for everyone to move on. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But the cat became a massive distraction for me. I was like, y'all need to let this cat die. That thing makes one meow and you're all done. That was really rough for me. I love cats. I'm a cat person. I'm a dog person. I really love animals. But seeing animals used in this way in films is always very dicey because it's such a fine line of using animals as a motivator for your characters can really go wrong whenever I think it's dumb. It's one thing to risk your life. It's another thing to risk everyone's life, which is what I felt she was doing. Yeah. So moving beyond my distractions, theme and plot. Dicey. She's dying of cancer and perhaps is looking to die with dignity and acceptance. On the one hand, cancer as a story device, I'm done with. Like for me, I was done about a decade ago. It got dicey 15 years ago, and then you see a few more and you're like, oh God, man, we got to find another way. But they didn't beat you over the head with it too badly, I think, because it was more about pain management. And so it was, if you're going to do it, this is what I can tolerate. This is the absolute maximum I can handle because it was really thoughtfully and carefully handled, I think. And so I do, though, love the direction of finding new stories apart from that original family to flesh this world out. And it also, to what you're saying, allows us to use fresh new metaphors that the monsters can represent. That was what was so cool for me about this story, is that in the first film, the monsters represented the inability of a family to communicate with each other. And that's why they couldn't talk. They couldn't talk not because of the monsters. The monsters was the excuse for them not to communicate with each other. And it just became, and if you go and listen to our first podcast about the first movie, I think, we have a really phenomenal conversation about all of that. And so I love that this is now pivoting to a new set of characters that you can then use the monsters as a new metaphor, or at least maybe the same metaphor, but with new circumstances. That's all okay. It becomes feeling like a whole new story because the circumstances have shifted. And so even though maybe she can't communicate what she's feeling or thinking because she can't speak because of the monsters, it still feels like fresh, ground to dig up. But I think they missed the boat. I think maybe her arc is a little too subtle, because I don't think we never have a strong understanding of her internal push and pull, right? Is she just bitter at dying? Does she have regrets? And then why does she suddenly accept it at the end? I don't feel like that's ever very cleanly drawn. It just kind of happens, and we accept it because of how good Lupita Nyong'o is. Like, she's so incredible that you're like, yeah, okay, I believe it. But I think a little more context could have made this a much more powerful journey. And I think a far better method would have been to pair her with a loved one. Like, for instance, her dad. Like, I think that would have been an incredible reversal of the first film by having her teach her dad that it's okay to let go and that she's ready and that he will be okay. Like, there's a whole incredible emotional journey. I mean, you could also use a spouse, or she has her own kid. All of that could have worked amazingly, but something, I think, that allows her to fight about her choice to end her life on her own terms. And then you can also use the chaotic violence of the monsters to kill people we meet along the way, and also help make the point that life is a gift and that anyone can die at any time, but she gets to choose, even though it feels like she doesn't right now because she knows she's going to die soon. She still has a choice. And then you can make this more elegant, beautiful metaphor about all of that we as a society, I think, are failing people when it comes to these kind of circumstances. I just think with the little minor tweaks, like, this has a huge right hand that it can really level the audience with.
I could not agree with you more. What if they made Djimon Hounsou her dad?
Ooh.
And then she dies at the end, and he lives and goes onto the island.
Yeah.
The second one, like, oh my God.
Whole new context to that second
whole
film.
new context. I mean, I could not agree with you more. The other stuff, I could see how that could maybe, but I have my arguments. But that, oh my God, would make it, because then we'd have him on screen the entire movie, which I want.
Yeah.
Which I want, and I totally believe him as her dad.
Yeah.
That, oh my God.
So
anyway, wow.
An opportunity, I think, that was missed. Again, I'm so glad they're exploring this stuff. One thing I did like, because I don't want to just, sit here and poo all over the place, is revealing character. I thought they did a really nice job at the beginning. She's mad at Reuben, and he's like, I'm your friend. Like, she tells him point blank, you're not my friend, you're a nurse. The implication being, you're only here as a job. You don't actually care about me. You're paid to care about me, which is a really fair accusation, I would say. It's rooted in a realistic and cynical approach to the world, which is revealing her character, that she's cynical about people loving her and wanting the best for her. And it's great, I think, to make a statement and then either prove it true or prove it false through actions and decisions. That's a great way to flesh out character for everyone. For her point of view of the world, and then for him to prove, that he is who he says he is. That's wonderful. That's such a good writing technique. And then, of course, he proves her wrong by looking after her and her cat. Like, that's a decision. Like, he made which is why I love up to that point the use of the cat. And then it also makes his death that much worse for knowing he actually did care about her. and it wasn't just a job as she suspected. Like such a beautiful use of killing off a character to reveal so many things about the world that we're inhabiting. And to your point earlier, I love the reprieve that we get from all the silence by using the rain, that storm. My favorite moment of the movie, bar none. Like just such a wonderful sequence of these two characters connecting and learning about each other. It was just killed me. It just was so good. And then of course our characters using the rain and storm is smart. It's revealing them to be intelligent, heroes. And then we can also reset the audience to resensitize for another long sequence of silence. We need that moment to take a breath and be like, okay, oh, words and people and noise. This is good. This is good. Oh crap. Now we can tense up again for all the silence. Great. Just great storytelling. It's very thoughtful from the 1,000-foot view of looking at your story as a whole and saying, okay, we're dealing with so much silence. We have noise, then we have silence. We need some more noise so that then we can have more silence. Fantastic. Yeah. And that summarizes all my poopy notes.
Yeah. I mean, I get the New York thing, I guess, but they established that at the beginning. Like New York is very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like screaming all day. So of course they'd be attracted to that, so they, I do get, it can be tiring, to see something like that, but I'm sure Chicago's pretty loud. Why not, I don't know, or whatever. But yeah, New York is definitely very loud and it's known for being loud. So, and yeah, I don't know. Now all I can think about is Djimon Hounsou being her dad. And what and how I want that story.
I really want that story.
Yeah.
Oh my god. What is
So what would you rate it then?
Out of 10, I'm probably sitting 6.5 to 7. I think it's hard for me to not see all the opportunity. And so I'd probably honestly lean closer to 6.5 with reflection. At walking out, I was like, this was a fun experience, and it's a 7. But with perspective and the maturity of time, like I would go 6.5. What about you?
I'm a 9. I'm a solid 9. Yes, I can't help but now see, to your brilliant point, some of the things they missed, but it is the story, it is what it is. And for what it is, I couldn't have asked for more, honestly. Especially nowadays, like the way that they make movies nowadays, it just, this is a breath of fresh air. So, yeah, I give it a 9 for sure. And setting, man, I was in a nice cinema with my son sitting next to me, and like, he was whispering to me. I was like, shh, be quiet, bro, be quiet. Yeah, like, so anyway, yeah.
Damn it, I already recommended that. Nice. So what are you going to recommend this week, man?
I can't believe we haven't recommended this. I'm going to recommend The Invisible Man. Yeah.
The new one,
which
the
we haven't done the newer one. Yeah. The 2020 one. Yeah. Lee
Wanell. Oh my god.
Which is like surprisingly good. Like, if for a remake, and I think the old one was in the 50s or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. But so they didn't really have a super high bar, I guess, but the way that they did it and the acting, and the practical effects that they did in that film, if you go watch behind the scenes stuff, is unbelievable. So cool. And how much fun that would have been to have been on set watching that happen. So cool. Anyway, so yeah, The Invisible Man, the 2020 version.
Dude, could not agree more. And that's a clinic on fundamentals of tension and suspense. Like, it's absolutely astronomically good. Like, it has no right being called the Invisible Man and being that good. It's crazy. And I've looked for that screenplay before, and I don't think I've found it. And so maybe I'll look again, because I'd love to just see what's on the page. And I can imagine it's like 60 or 70 pages. Like, there's so much time just spent in suspense, and the way he builds it is an absolute masterclass on how to do that. And I fully intend to study that more. Great recommendation. I'm going to recommend my pizza dough recipe. She was all about getting a slice of pizza. And if you're like me and you're a terrible chef, there is a simple, stupid easy method of making your own pizza dough that can also double as garlic bread. I'll put it in the show notes. But a quick rundown is you combine all your dry ingredients, 273 grams of flour. There's more specifics that come along with that. 9 grams of salt, 3 grams of garlic powder. And then you combine that all together. Then you mix in 220 grams of warm water, 3 grams of yeast, a tablespoon of honey, and then let it bloom for 10 minutes. And then you mix in piece by piece some of that dry mix, slowly use a wooden spoon. That's really important, actually, just because you lose so much if you go just straight hands. It's also nice to not have to put your hands in that stuff, but you lose so much dough on your fingers because it's impossible to get off, but very easy to get off the wooden spoon. Do not underestimate the magic of the wooden spoon. And so from there, you mix in until you got about half. Then you add about 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And then you finish mixing in the other half, mix it, let it sit for 15, 20 minutes, mix it again, and then cover it, let it sit for, 12 hours, let it rise, and then mix it again, stuff it in the fridge, and then you divide it. And you can either eat it as pizza. I like to throw it in like a cast iron pan with my own homemade toppings, or just throw it in the oven for whatever, 350, 10, 12 minutes. And you have amazing garlic bread. It's stupid easy. There's no starter dough. There's much more, probably far superior pizza doughs, I'm certain. And I'm still working on this recipe, but this is the one that I'm like satisfied with for a quick, easy pizza night at home. Yeah. So
quick and easy if you have an entire day to make it.
But yes, a full day is preferable.
Jesus Christ. Beautiful. I love it.
Nice. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to go way back and take a look at the Stephen King adapted story, Stand By Me. And I think this will be Todd's first time fully watching it. So we'll see what he thinks. If he thinks it holds up or it's, lacking. TBD, what the man himself thinks. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review, and let us know the kind of things you want us to cover. If you want to comment on this episode, tell me why it's actually far better than I understand. You can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/aquietplaceday1.
And I'm sure somebody will find a way to do that.
I'm sure.
And our quote of the day today is from Nina Simone. Ooh, I like this. I'll tell you what freedom is to me. No fear. I mean, really, no fear. It's great. I mean, one quick sentence. That's great.
So good. And I think it speaks to like she's playing Nina Simone, obviously, whenever the movie ends, which is a really fun and funky way to end the film. I loved it, and that's where she's at in her life now. She's living without fear of death, and that, even though is going to lead to her imminent death, is also absolute freedom, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. She went the way she wanted to go too. She made her own decision. So yeah, great quote. This was a blast, man. I had a blast watching it, blast talking to you about it. Simon wanted to be on the episode, but then he got kind of cold feet. So maybe sometime later.
Yeah.
Anyway, love your insights there, man. So thank you for that. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please review us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share us with your friends. All of it really helps. And if there's a film you'd like to see us pick apart and talk about, share it with us. Who knows, maybe we'll do it. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. Cutting!